and welcome back to the Hawaii Travel Made Easy podcast. I'm Marcie, your go-to Hawaii travel expert who has visited the islands more than 40 times. If you're new here, I'm so glad you found us. Today's episode is all about multi-generational travel in Hawaii, and we've got a special guest. Her name is Melissa Conn, and she runs the popular family travel blog, The Family Voyage, and she's done a few multi-gen trips to Hawaii. All right, let's jump in and start chatting about how to plan the ultimate multi-generational trip to Hawaii. Aloha, Melissa. Thanks so much for being here.
Aloha. Great to see you, Marcie.
So let's just jump right in. And can you tell us a little bit about your family and who you've traveled to Hawaii with most recently?
Sure. I'm a married mom with 2 kids, just like you. My kids are 10 and 13. We live in Columbus, Ohio now, but before that we were in LA, which gives you much better access to Hawaii. Between those 2 locations, we actually traveled full-time for 2 years, which included 2 separate visits to Hawaii. So obviously, we love Hawaii so much. I've been 7 or 8 times, but we've gotten to do 2 multi-generational trips there. The most recent one was over winter break, and we went with my husband's side of the family. At our biggest on that trip, we were 13 people. We had 7 kids evenly spaced from 3 to 17 years old, 5 of us middle-aged folks, and then we were with Grandma, who is 77 years young. And she absolutely loves Hawaii. So a lot of the impetus for that trip was that she hadn't been in many years and really wanted to get back.
That's awesome. And where do you guys travel from? Where are you located?
We're flying from the Columbus airport, so it's pretty far to get to Hawaii these days.
Absolutely. So I know you've done it twice. What islands have you visited?
On our multi-generational trips, the first one was back in 2018. And as I mentioned, my family was traveling full-time for a couple of years. We had a large vacation home through the Home Exchange Network. That was a partnership we had for my blog. And we had that house for 5 weeks on the windward coast of Oahu. So during that trip, we had both of the grandmas, my mom and my mother-in-law, join us for about 10 days of that trip. And that was really special to have them with us in Hawaii. More recently, we were on Oahu as a group of 10 over winter break. And then we flew to Maui and picked up 3 more in the extended family. We were on Maui for 6 days.
Oh, that's awesome. Are there any favorite islands that the family preferred?
Maui is really popular for everybody in the family. You know, as you know, Maui's got something for everybody. It has tons of different options, whether you want to hang out on the beach or do activities, hiking, cultural points.
Absolutely. Yeah. Maui is fantastic. I know when we do multi-generational trips to Hawaii, Maui seems to always be number one that people request. So I totally get you on that. What do you think is your biggest challenge when planning a trip with multiple generations?
Well, for us, the biggest challenge always is getting the dates right. And unfortunately, what we have realized is that the only option that works for the whole extended family, because we do these trips pretty much every winter, is the second week of winter break. That's it. That's the only overlap that we have between everybody's work and school schedules. But unfortunately, that's also the absolute most expensive week of the year to travel to Hawaii. And Hawaii's already expensive, so this is a real gut punch.
No, I have been there too. That's the same week that seems to work for our families as well.
Yeah. And then, the other piece that's a challenge for us, to be honest, is that the most natural way to save money on a multi-gen trip to Hawaii is rent a big house for everybody. And then you can economize on your accommodations. You can use the kitchen, everything like that. But the reality is that we have a few different households coming together and everybody's got different styles. So we thought about it for this trip as a way to save money, but it would have been really challenging to try to get everybody happily staying under one roof. So I think beyond getting dates lined up, figuring out accommodations that make sense for everybody in terms of both the budget, but also everybody getting along and having a good time together.
We have also encountered that. So I feel you on that. What did you guys for accommodations on this last trip?
For this one, we stayed on 2 different properties because, as I mentioned, we had a group of 10 that was on Oahu first, and then we hopped over to Maui. So on Oahu, we stayed at the Hyatt Regency Waikiki in 3 rooms, and then we stayed at the Andaz Wailea in 4 rooms.
Nice. And did that work out for everybody? Was everybody happy?
Yeah, both properties were really great for us. Part of the motivation for staying at those properties is that As you probably know, I have Hyatt Globalist status, which gives us lots of perks when we stay at Hyatt properties, including free breakfast or club access for everybody. I'm able to get everybody on board with getting all of those perks. And it can be a real money saver when you have lots of people traveling with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point about it's really tempting to get a giant house for everybody. You also have to take in consideration the emotional toll, maybe, and how different it is to have multiple households all living under the same roof, and that it might, while you might save money, it might cost you in other ways, correct?
Exactly. And you hit on a really great point. And you're right, it's the emotional toll. And that can be people getting along. It could also be as simple as one family keeps their stuff a lot tidier than the other.
Yes.
I don't want to stay in a big rental house that's got 10 people's stuff strewn all over the living room. I just can't do it. I need to get into my hotel room, unpack, put everything away in a drawer and keep it tidy. And that would be really hard when you've got 13 people in one house. And one of the other issues we encountered when we did consider that, we thought about maybe doing a few side-by-side condos or townhouses. But particularly over the holidays, you do run into those minimum stay requirements. That the complex that we had stayed at for spring break last year, we really wanted to stay at again, had, I think, a 10-day minimum stay over the holiday period. Another one in the area had a 14-day minimum stay, and that just wasn't going to work for our entire group.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point to always be looking at those minimum stays, because I feel like just with all of the situations with short-term rentals in Hawaii, it's really important just to read those and make sure that you're following those. But it can be frustrating when you just want it for 7 days. I get that.
Yeah.
So how do you usually decide which island to visit and where to stay when you are dealing with people from many different generations, many families?
There's so many factors that go into play. We actually made a mid-course change for this specific trip that we did in December. In this case, for us, the choice of which island to stay on and which hotel really went hand in hand. We knew we were going to spend a couple of days on Oahu because my sister-in-law's got family there, and our immediate family wanted to revisit some old favorites from that long stay that we did back in 2018. But then my immediate family had been in Hawaii, splitting between Maui and Kauai for spring break last year. And it was kind of a scouting trip, and I'm really glad that we did it that way. We had both a push and a pull involved in deciding where to stay. We stayed down in Wailea in March, and it was our first time in South Maui, and we really loved it. We had a condo that was right next to the Andaz Wailea, and the beaches down there are really spacious and they're not crowded. It's definitely a nice change of pace compared with Kihei or even Kanapali. But then when we hopped over to Kauai, we were staying at the Grand Hyatt Kauai in Poipu. I think you've stayed there before as well, right?
Yes, we love that property.
Beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. And that was where we had originally planned on doing this multi-gen trip. And we really loved it. Don't get me wrong at all. My mother-in-law especially, she loves flowers and landscaping. So we thought this is going to be perfect. And because of my global status, I would have been able to give club access to everybody in the family. So that would have covered us for breakfast and snacks and even a light dinner from the hors d'oeuvres if need be. Unfortunately, there are two things about Grand Hyatt Kauai that made it ultimately not the right fit for us. One is that hotel's really, really spread out. If you think about, let's say, the Hyatt Regency Waikiki as being totally vertical, right? 26 floors or something and 2 towers. Well, the Grand Hyatt Kauai is exactly the opposite. Everything's very low slung, but super far apart. And because we knew we would want club access there, and at least at the time, the club was in what they call the Poipu wing, whereas the pools are in what they call the shipwreck wing. Those are so far apart. Even for us as a young, active family, it was kind of a hike to get between our room next to the club and the pool area. And for Grandma, who had a knee replacement a year and a half ago, that would have easily been a 20-minute walk anytime she wanted to get to the room, to the club, to the pool. And so we felt like it was just going to be really taxing on her. As I mentioned, we had a 3-year-old in tow who is not a fast walker. She's 3. She gets distracted. There are a lot of things to be distracted by along the way. So that was one real concern. And then the second is that the beach at that property is not swimmable.
Right.
It can actually be really dangerous, even though we were going to be in the least dangerous part of Kauai for a winter trip.
Yes.
It's not a place where we could comfortably send, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old to enjoy splashing in the water. So ultimately, we decided that it was going to be easier if we were somewhere else. There are great beaches near Grand Hyatt Kauai. Poipu Beach is awesome and perfect for kids. But when you're talking about 13 people having to get ready, get in all the different cars, bring chairs and towels and sand toys and everything with you, then find parking across the street, schlep everybody over to the beach, it's really a lot. So in the end, my preference was to have a property where it was going to be a little less walking for grandma, and we had a good beach on site so that if we wanted a beach day, we could just walk right there. Andaz Wailea was perfect for that. I don't think anybody had any complaints. There was still a decent amount of walking, I'm not going to lie, because the pools there are terraced, one right below the other, and then the beach is at the bottom. There are ramps to go all over the property, though, which is great. But the beach there is serviced.
Yeah.
So the beach not only is gorgeous and swimmable and not crowded, but they've got really wonderful team down there that is providing chairs and towels and snorkel gear and kayaks and everything that you want without you having to bring anything. They even had beach toys for the kids. So that worked out really well for us. And so, as I said, it was really the decision about the hotel on the island going hand in hand. That's how we ended up on Maui instead of our original plan of going to Kauai.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It's a good thing that you weighed the pros and cons and realized what needs each member of the family would have, for sure. So how far in advance do you start planning a multi-generational trip?
The earlier, the better. We've done a couple of these multi-gen winter trips. We've got another one coming up later this year. And I would say that we usually start brainstorming at least a year in advance, sometimes more. And then I'm looking to start booking cancelable hotel rooms as soon as the calendar opens for Hyatt, which is my preferred brand. That's 13 months out. The nice thing is that you can generally reprice your reservations if the price drops, but at least you've locked in those rooms. As I said, we need 4 rooms. Every now and then we're actually doing 5 now because of some changes in the family. And it can be hard to get 5 rooms or 4 rooms all in the same vicinity. You got to make sure that everybody has the same type of view so nobody feels like they're being left out.
Yes.
And it's certainly possible to book things closer in, especially if, let's say, you just need 2 rooms because it's the kids, the parents, and the grandparents. That's a much easier situation to handle versus, 4 or even 5 rooms. So you really have to be on the ball if you've got a big group going.
No, I totally agree on that. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about activities, because I know that is another thing that people are always asking me about in emails and on Instagram and stuff. So, what kinds of activities have worked best for all the age groups in your family? Where you're talking about grandma, you're talking about a 3-year-old. What has worked best?
Cultural activities are really great. As I think I've told you, I went to the old Lahaina Luau, which had just reopened in March of 2024. Everybody had a great time. It actually reopened the week after our family's spring break trip last year. So we didn't get to go last year, but we went in December, January. We also did a really great whale watching trip. That was a hit. And then on Oahu, which again was only 10 people, not 13 people, we spent a half day at the Bishop Museum, which my family loves. We've been there a bunch of times. And that's really great because for the kids, there's a whole science center. And then for the adults, there's a great cultural area. But everybody can find something to appeal to them in both areas. And if you have enough people, you can get great deals on activities like luau's and the Bishop Museum. Like at the Bishop Museum, I originally was going to purchase admission for 10 people. And then the nice lady at the desk said, hey, if you buy a membership, you get a certain number of guest passes, and it's actually going to be cheaper for you to become a member just for this one day visit. So that worked out really well. For the luau, I know that they had a 14 or 15 person minimum to get a group discount. So we were just a little bit shy of that, unfortunately. But yeah, in general, I would say those kind of cultural activities have been really great.
Yeah, that's great insight. So I know we've talked about the cultural activities, or, beach days and pool time and whatever. How do you balance the downtime and excursions when you have toddlers, teens, and grandparents in the mix? Is there some sort of secret formula, or how do you handle it?
I'm not going to lie. In many ways, this is the hardest part. You and I have traveled
Mhm.
together. So you know that I always want to be out, especially snorkeling. But there are a lot of people in my family who, like you, just want to lay by the pool and read a book. And that's totally cool. So generally, I try to come up with activities that my immediate family wants to do. And then I send them out to the whole group to see who wants to sign up.
Mhm.
And people have agency. They don't have to do things that they don't want to do, except my kids. They don't get a choice. But with such a big group, I do it pretty far out to make sure that there are enough because sometimes we do end up needing to have essentially a private tour.
Mhm.
If we want to do kayaking and there are 10 people, well, it's not going to work if somebody else has already signed up for, let's say, 2 spots
Right.
and the kayaking company can only take 10 people at a time. So I really have to be on the ball in terms of getting that stuff lined up. To keep everybody happy, I usually try to plan for an activity or excursion every other day. We want to have, a balance of relaxation, especially for those who aren't traveling as often as my immediate family.
Right.
This might be their big opportunity of the year to sit by the pool with a book or to just enjoy a casual beach day. We are fortunate we get those opportunities a lot, but not everybody in the family does.
Totally. And I think that that's between a trip and a vacation, too.
I am team trip.
I am as well.
One thing I want to say that was really perfect about the Andaz in this particular area is that the resort fee there includes a lot of experiences that you would be paying for otherwise. So like we did a guided kayaking trip. We did outrigger canoeing. We did all this cool stuff. It's on site. It's already included in the fee. So there's no discussion of who's paying for what. And oftentimes those excursions are early in the morning. So it was easy for me to slot those in, even on days when we didn't have plans that were off property.
Mhm.
So we might call it a pool day for everybody. But for me, it's outrigger canoeing, a few hours of snorkeling, and then meet up with everybody at the pool.
Yeah.
So finding a property where you can do some of that really cool stuff without leaving the vicinity is very helpful if you're trying to balance that trip versus vacation vibe.
I think that's the ultimate hack right there. I think you hit it on the money right there. Can you share a favorite activity or moment that stood out for your whole group? Was there anything that all of you were like, gosh, this was so amazing. I'm so glad we did it.
I would say that whale watching on Maui was a big hit for everybody because we got to see, I think they call it a heat run, where you have all of these whales circling. So we got to see tons of whales. We were there in January, which is perfect time for whale
Yeah.
watching in Maui. But I am going to cheat, and I want to share a favorite for me
Yeah,
personally.
totally.
So we were actually on Oahu for my birthday, and I got to do all my favorite things with my favorite people. So this is why this is, for more personal for me. We started off visiting the gardens at Waimea Valley, and then we went up to Turtle Bay and snorkeled and played at the beach. And we wrapped up with dinner at the beach house in Haleva, sitting at a huge table. And I got to be surrounded by most of my favorite people in the whole world in one of my favorite places in the whole world. So how can you beat that?
That sounds amazing. I love it when you get to celebrate your birthday somewhere else and you get to do all your favorite things with your favorite people. I think that that's the ultimate, right?
Exactly. But especially if you get to celebrate that birthday in Hawaii.
Yes. I mean,
Right? You can't beat that.
you really can't. Well, we talked about good things, but are there any excursions or activities that didn't go as planned or weren't a good fit and you heard a bunch of complaints about it?
No big complaints. I think honestly we did pretty well in that realm. And I think part of that is because my husband Ronnie and I have spent so much time in Hawaii.
Mhm.
And we also know our travel crew really well. We know what's gonna fly and what's gonna flop. The biggest hiccup was that we did book one guided kayaking trip that most of the group did. But my sister-in-law and her daughter are both really prone to motion sickness. They know
Oh.
that and we know that. So we always are a little bit hesitant on small watercraft experiences. Big boats, they're fine. They both took some Dramamine and they thought they were going to be okay. But in the end, they did have to paddle in early
Yeah.
with the guide. But because we had what amounted to a private tour, since we were 10 people,
Yeah.
it worked out okay. There was nobody else on the trip that was inconvenienced. Our guide was able to just pause the tour, take care of them, get them back to shore safely, and then hook back up with the rest of the group and continue the experience.
Nice. Well, and I think part of that is probably that you guys have done these multi-generational trips other places before. So this isn't your first time doing it. But I think It would have been
No.
probably a different experience had this been the first time you guys were all traveling together.
Yeah, and it was also not the first time that we've had a challenge with those two in particular, having motion sickness when we're on small boats. Lots of funny stories about those kinds of things happening in Mexico versus,
Totally. Totally. I know it's so unpredictable sometimes, or predictable, I guess, if you know that they're prone to it.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, let's switch gears and talk about food because
Mhm.
that is another big concern with groups for sure, and especially with meal dietary restrictions and things like that. So, what is your strategy when it comes to meals? Like, do you mostly eat out or cook your own at a rental or do a mix? What works for your family?
So hard for us. Not gonna lie, so hard. As I mentioned before, I thought that for this trip, a hotel was going to be the best option because we didn't all want to stay under one roof. We did end up eating all of our dinners out. Breakfast was included for everybody, thanks to my status with Hyatt. And if you haven't stayed at Andaz Wailea or at least gone for brunch, you've got to do it once because the spread is amazing. It's incredible. And there were some days that we got away with just giving the kids a snack in the middle of the day and then having an early dinner. By the way, also the Andaz brand, they give you free mini bar. They have tons of snacks and drinks and stuff included in your room, and you just take what you want, and then they refill it later in the day.
That's amazing.
So we were, yeah, so it's a really nice perk. The Andaz brand has been great for us. So we were able to get away with not necessarily having like a sit-down lunch every day. There were some days that we did, but it was kind of catch as catch can. We'd maybe get the kids some food poolside or walk over to the shops at Wailea. Or, one time we had an excursion in a different part of the island, so we got lunch. And then on those days, we just planned for an early dinner. But then dinner we did out at restaurants every night.
Nice. And then when you were eating out, were there any restaurants that worked really well for having a larger?
This, again, was one of the hardest things. My husband is such a trooper. He started working on dinner reservations more than a month out. And I think I was messaging you about some of the challenges that we were encountering because even a month of lead time wasn't enough for such a big group visiting over the peak holiday period. We were only able to get, I think, 2 reservations on Maui. One that I want to highlight because people might not know about it, it's called Gather on Maui, and that is a newer restaurant that's at the golf course in Wailea. That was really great. If you go shortly before sunset, they have a beautiful view. Really, really had a great meal there. And then on Oahu, we ate at Tommy Bahama in Waikiki. That worked really well. They're great for big groups. They have a beautiful rooftop with a nice view as well. Oh, you have a city view, not an ocean view there. But they were happy to accommodate our big group. And they had a lot of options for all ages. You mentioned dietary restrictions. My daughter has celiac disease. She was diagnosed in between our March trip to Hawaii and our December trip to Hawaii. So we had 2 very different experiences, going back with that really serious dietary restriction. Actually, there were 2 other people in our extended family who were also diagnosed with celiac disease in that same time period. So that was really something that we had to get used to. But Hawaii was great about that. I think more than a lot of destinations in America, people understand and are willing to accommodate the needs of a strictly gluten-free diet. Other than those few where we were able to get reservations, we did a lot of quick service type restaurants, popular spots like Paia Fish Market, Coconuts Fish Cafe, both really great.
Those are my favorites.
But man, over the holiday period, those lines can be crazy.
Yeah.
We're talking like an hour-long wait at Paia. So because I think one thing we're going to talk about in a few minutes is the vehicle strategy. We did have multiple cars, spoiler alert. So sometimes we would send one car, whoever was ready first, over to get in line at Paia Fish Market or Coconuts. And then the other 2 cars would follow behind once their people were ready. That helped a little bit, but definitely a struggle to accommodate such a big group. And the other thing, you're talking about having multiple tables. So you have to figure out how to break things down. Kids table, grown-ups table. Definitely a big, big, big challenge.
No, for sure. Yeah. So let's go ahead and talk about the vehicle situation. So it sounded like you're renting cars for each individual family. Is that right?
Yeah. Multiple cars, no question at all. We had 3 cars for 13 people. Grandma doesn't really drive, so she would just go with whomever had a spot for her. And that works out well because there were times that we split up based on interests or based on who was ready first, usually my family. And that worked out well.
Nice. Okay. And then were there any transportation tips that had made things easier for your group?
Well, I'll tell you, one of my few regrets on planning that trip is that I didn't book a bigger car for my household.
Mm,
We're a family of four, and then we knew we'd be bringing grandma from the airport to the hotel, but then we figured the other folks would be transporting her around because she doesn't see them as much as she sees
got
us.
it.
She lives down the street. We see her all the time. So it's an opportunity for her to spend time with the other parts of the family. But I figured, all right, a standard sedan is going to be fine. And I have the top tier APIS status. So typically when I book a standard sedan, people to get into something bigger, usually an SUV, sometimes a minivan. But unfortunately, because it was that peak holiday period, they were totally sold out and it just didn't happen. We had a really cramped sedan.
Oh.
I don't even know why this standard sedan was so tight, more cramped than any other sedan I think I've been in. And it was a challenge because while in theory we had enough seats for everybody across all the cars, sometimes it didn't line up perfectly or comfortably with where people wanted to go at different times or who they wanted to ride with. You know, it's an opportunity for extended family from around the country to get together. So there's a lot of trading of kids, trading of, middle-aged folks as we want to spend time with people from different parts of the country. And then, one other thing that I wish I had done differently is it's a little specific to our family, but as you know, I'm a car seat technician.
Yes.
So I'm always weighing which safety device to bring for my daughter since she still rides in a booster seat. And for this trip, I brought a super compact booster seat because we're team carry-on and I could just slide it right into my carry-on. What I didn't think about is that my niece and nephew are still too small to ride in that specific booster seat.
Oh.
They ride in boosters, but that one has higher minimum requirements. So the kids all wanted to play musical cars because sometimes the brother and sister want to ride together. Sometimes they want to trade off and do boy car, girl car. Sometimes we have to put a teenager in the middle, whatever. But because I had a different booster seat that the younger kids couldn't use, we were constantly having to swap car seats if the kids wanted to ride in a different vehicle than they had the last. And if I had just brought the same one that my niece and nephew were using, which is in my garage, it would have been a lot easier for everybody and would have kind of streamlined that. So like if you're traveling with younger kids, if you have a bunch of cousins that still ride in harness car seats, I would say to think about a flexible option that's lightweight, but that you can also easily adjust for the different kids. So something like a Graco Contender is a great choice for that situation. If all the kids are under 40 pounds, just put it in rear facing, move the headrest up and down for whoever's going to ride. Or if all the cousins are 5, 6, older, bring a flexible booster like the Kiko GoFit or the Graco Turbo Booster. And then the kids can ride wherever they want. You don't have to worry about switching car seats every other minute.
No, I think that is such great insight. I'm so glad that you brought that up because I think a lot of families, it wouldn't even occur to them to check with their, brother-in-laws, sister-in-laws and stuff to see what kind of car seats people are bringing because that would really save people a lot of stress. And then I want to ask you a question that I know the answer you're going to give, but should people bring their own car seats or should they rent something when they land in Hawaii?
They should definitely bring their own because, well, you never know what you're going to get. I mean, as a car seat technician, I've had the experience of helping basically stranded grandparents at the airport who rented a car seat and discovered that it was missing parts. It was missing the lower anchor strap. The top tethers had been cut off probably by an airline or a car rental employee who didn't know how to uninstall it. You never know what you're going to get. If you're in a peak period when the car rental agency is sold out, they can't even guarantee that they're going to have a car seat at all.
Well, and you never know if it's the right for your child either. That's something that they can't guarantee.
Absolutely. And what you may not know, you probably know this, Marcie, but your listeners may not know, Hawaii actually has pretty stringent car seat requirements, which I think is awesome. They require kids to ride in a car seat or booster seat until they're 10 years old or 4'9". And most kids are not 4'9" at age 7 or 8 whenever people frequently stop using a booster seat. So you should plan on bringing a booster seat for your kid until at least age 10 in Hawaii. And then they do require a harness car seat until at least 4 years old, which is pretty standard. But usually it's safest until 5 or even 6 years old to stick with a harness car seat.
Yeah. These are all
so
good points.
Definitely bring your own from home if you need help choosing a lightweight car seat. I'm definitely your expert on that.
Yes, you definitely are. All right, so I want to switch gears again, and I know that you are like the queen of miles and points and everything. So like, have you used any travel rewards, points, group discounts, whatever to save money? I know we touched on this a little bit, but I want to like really talk about it now.
Absolutely. You know me. You ready to get into the
Yes,
weeds?
let's do this.
Okay. So the group of us flying from Ohio, there are 5 of us total, including Grandma, flew on Southwest. We don't have great options on any airline for getting to Hawaii. It's far. We have to stop no matter what. And those tickets were basically the same price as what all of the other airlines charge. And the schedules were pretty much the same. But my husband and I both have the Southwest companion passes. So that means our kids fly essentially free with us anytime we fly. It's just the cost of taxes, which is the mandatory government fee, which is $5.60 each way. So for the round trip flight for each of my kids, it was $11.20.
That's amazing.
For the island hop from Oahu to Maui, $5.60. We can use that over and over. Southwest Companion Pass is like the best thing since sliced bread.
Okay, but they did change some stuff, right, recently?
The Companion Pass has not changed, at least thus far. Southwest has made a lot of changes. They've announced a lot of changes in the last month or two. I don't love all of them, but they still are not really going to impact our travel pattern. One of the big changes they made is they are going to start charging for checked bags. We don't check bags.
Gotcha.
However, the way that most people get the Companion Pass is by holding Southwest credit cards. And Southwest credit card holders are still going to get free check bags.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Not only for the credit card holder, but for their family members traveling on the same itinerary.
Perfect.
So if you want to go to Hawaii and you're in a city that is served well by Southwest, I definitely think you should look into that Companion Pass. Total game changer. Another thing that was a big savings for us is that as a small business owner, I have a discount arranged with Hyatt. Lots of travel companies have small business programs that you can sign up for. And Hyatt's is nice because you can sign up for it just by having the Hyatt business credit card. There's no minimum amount of business that you have to do with them every year, as long as you have that World of Hyatt business card. So we're able to get discounts on our room rates, including at the Andaz Wailea. And I'm also able to stack my globalist benefit on top of that.
Oh, that's
globalist
fantastic.
is Hyatt's top tier status. Yeah, it provides some really amazing benefits. Free parking on awards days. Resort fees are waived, whether it's a cash stay or an award stay. My family gets free breakfast or club access, but then I also have guest of honor awards that I can apply to the other rooms that are traveling with us. So it's really an amazing perk it's in the realm of points and miles, but saved us tons of money. In fact, we had initially planned or talked about staying at the Wailea Beach Resort next door, and that's a super family-friendly Marriott property. It's got a game room, it's got water slides, it's kind of got everything. But when I crunched the numbers of getting everybody at least a partial ocean view at the Wailea Beach Resort and getting everybody breakfast, because I wanted to start the day off easy, the Andaz came out to $12,000 cheaper for the 4 rooms that we booked.
Whoa.
Thanks to all of the discounts I was getting and globalist benefits. Yeah, $2,000. Huge. Obviously, it's an expensive trip, but that's really meaningful savings. So we actually opted to use $1,000 of that savings to purchase resort pass for Wailea Beach Resort. And we used that on our last day. And that worked out great. So we got some cabanas there and had a really fun day, but we still had the massive $11,000 in savings from staying at the Andaz, plus we got all of these great benefits. Okay, I had to make notes on this because I wanted to make sure to give your listeners all of the inside track on the award travel aspect.
Thank you.
Since the Andaz Wailea, it was a cash stay, we didn't use points to stay there, but it did kick off a ton of points especially since as a globalist, I get a 30% bonus on any points earnings. And I also put it on my Hyatt credit card. So I got extra points for doing it that way.
Nice.
So we're doing a cruise this coming winter as an extended family again, same group of people. And I'm able to use those points that we generated in Hawaii to cover everybody's hotels both before and after the
Oh,
cruise.
that's fantastic.
So that's working out really
Yeah.
well. Yeah. The other aspect of savings that I wanted to make sure I told you guys about is rental cars, because rental cars can be really expensive. You're looking at, during holiday period, probably $100 a day once you include all the taxes, airport fees. For Oahu, I used my Capital One Venture X card, and I took advantage of the $300 annual travel credit that comes with that card. You have to book it through their portal, and they have an exclusive partnership with Hertz to provide status benefits. So you can book any company through the Capital One portal, but you're only going to get status benefits if you book through Hertz. But that's fine because that card gives you Hertz President's Circle.
Nice.
Which gives you all the upgrades and all the extra points and everything. So that was how I booked our car for Oahu, and I saved $300 on that. And then on Maui, I used my Avis small business discount rate. I also have top tier status with Avis because I had to match that Hertz status that Capital One gave me for free with my card. In theory, I should get a double upgrade, but as I told you, if they're completely sold out, there's nothing they can put you in. They can only put you in the class of car that you've reserved. So I would say that didn't work out as well as I would typically hope. And then, it's not quite in the points realm, but obviously you could look at group savings for things like luau's and kayaking. If you're not going to be able to get a group discount, sometimes it's actually cheaper for you to book through an aggregator like Get Your Guide or Viator and stack that with portal savings through Rakuten. There's all sorts of little hacks to save money, get some cash back, or get some points back. And then you can use that for your next trip.
I love that. These are all great tips. Thank you. So I have one final question for you. And it is, what is your biggest piece of advice for someone planning their first big Hawaii trip with extended family?
I'm glad you asked. And I'm glad that this is coming right after the question about points and miles, because they kind of relate to each other. In the big picture, I would say start planning early. Like before the hotel calendars and flights are even open, because you need to have a handle on what the options are that are going to fit your budget and everybody's needs, and also where the opportunities are to book those options while minimizing your costs by using points and miles. I really try to leverage those rewards to decrease our travel costs, but I'm getting those pieces into place 15 to 18 months in advance to make it possible. So I'll give you an example that's really tangible. If I wanted to spend 5 nights at the Grand Hyatt Kauai next year on points, I know that I probably have to book it a year out in order to find that award availability, because that hotel books up. So that means a year before my travel dates, I need 200,000 points in my Hyatt account. And I'm going to get them through transferring from my Chase Ultimate Rewards. How am I going to get those Chase points? Well, if I don't already have them, probably my husband and I are going to open a new credit card or 2, or maybe 3. And then we're probably going to use the Chase shopping portal to top things off. But I have to get that lined up way in advance, right? I need to be opening those credit cards 15 to 18 months before our travel dates. And even if you're staying in a condo, of course, the bigger units are going to get snapped up quickly for school breaks. And the same rule of thumb is going to apply to grabbing flights on points, right? There's limited availability for award travel. You've got a little more time there because the carriers that go from the US to Hawaii usually open their schedules 11 months out, and Southwest is 6 months out. So you've got much more time there to get things into place. But the cool thing about doing a trip like this with your extended family is that if you're all trying to pay for it together and you want to maximize those rewards, you can collaborate a little bit, right? You can refer each other to those award credit cards to rack up even more points. So like if I looked and saw that American had the best schedule for everybody to go to Hawaii, I could refer my husband and my mother-in-law and my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law all to the Chase Sapphire Reserve. They'd each get the current 100,000 point sign-up bonus, and I'd get another 40,000 points in referrals. So in total, that gives us a big bank of 440,000 points to use. And after checking availability, We could say, right, we're going to transfer them to British Airways, where we can pool our household points and get those really competitive rates to Hawaii on the American Airlines flights. But it takes a lot of research and strategy and time to put all that into place. I know that kind of stuff makes you a little crazy because there's so many moving parts. But, just like with those quick little examples, you can make Hawaii an attainable destination for a multi-gen trip. You just really have to give it some advanced thought and, do your research.
No, absolutely. This was fantastic. So that is a wrap on today's episode. Thanks so much, Melissa, for chatting with me today. How can my listeners find you?
They can find me primarily at thefamilyvoyage.com. I love to write long-form content, as you know, and I've got a whole page full of Hawaii articles that can help them plan their own destinations. Of course, they can get expert advice from you as well. And then they can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at The Family Voyage.
That's awesome. If you found this episode helpful, I'd so appreciate it if you'd subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend who's planning their Hawaii trip. It helps more travelers find this show, and I'm always so grateful for your support. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Until next time, mahalo for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Aloha.